to Celtic State of Mind. I have to say thank you to everybody for getting into the chat and getting onto the broadcast. You were nearly here before us today. Needless to say, there was a lot of scarpering at the last minute because unfortunately the internet at the studio has gone down. So you nearly were getting, well, at least not a live broadcast today anyway. But we are here, as bedraggled as we are, and ready to go. I'm joined as always by Tony Haggerty and Jim Orr. Tony, how you doing?
Okay, I think bedraggled's the word because I've just come in for walking the dogs, hence the hat and all that. Hat, scarves, badges and tapes, hair colours, yes. But yeah, bad hair day, so keep the hat on.
Hats, scarves, badges and tapes indeed. Jim, how you doing?
Good lord, glad to be back. Yes.
Glad to have you back. Plenty to discuss, and we're also hopefully going to be joined by Celtic by Numbers, also more commonly known as Alan Morrison, later on in the show, hopefully. But until he comes in, we will crack on with what we've got to discuss. First thing we have to discuss, obviously, Jim, you weren't here with us the last couple of weeks. It's been an up and down couple of weeks. So I wanted to ask your sort of brief summation of the defeat followed by the win up at Aberdeen and how you think things are going. Is there any more signs of optimism on your side? Is there anything concerning you that you've seen?
Yes, to all the above. Yeah, definitely. I think the Dundee United game was a win the previous Saturday, which I thought we played okay. We made loads of chances, should have won the game, and I was fairly optimistic after the game. I was obviously disappointed to drop the 2 points, but I thought we had them pinned back the last 20 minutes and a goal was going to come. So I thought we did okay. It was similar to the Ross County game a wee bit, and I could understand why he left a Yeti on. There was lots of people wanting a Yeti off, but Yeti could have played similar against Ross County as a goal scorer. So I thought we were unlucky against Dundee United. Bayer Leverkusen, we knew before the match we could get hammered here, we could get a real doing, and I thought the first 25 minutes were excellent. Kyogo, he's the guy that missed the two chances. It wasn't a big Ange. It was Turnbull that fell on his backside. It wasn't a big Ange that fell on his backside. We lose that first goal, we lose the second goal, and people start booing the team, which is really unhelpful. We're playing this crack German team who've spent tens of millions of pounds on the players, and we're losing by a couple of goals, and fans are booing the team. Come out the second half, first 10 minutes, excellent again, put them under pressure. Unfortunate to lose the penalty kick, really unfortunate. All of a sudden we're 3 down. And at that point, there's still 35 minutes to go. Hundreds, maybe even thousands of fans start to leave. Obviously, if you pay your money, you can do what you want within reason, but we need people to support the team at the moment. If you were to contrast that with the Aberdeen game, with the fans, they sang for 90 minutes, supported the team, and that's faithful through and through. That's, we don't care if we win, lose or draw. So I just think the team needs a lot of support. Just now, we are where we are, and it's not the team's fault, and it's not Ange's fault, it's Peter Lawwell's fault and the dysfunctional board. That's not to say that you can't criticise Ange, but I think we need to get behind the team. So we end up losing 4-0 against a really, really good team. Hey-ho, we are where we are. I was more concerned about the Aberdeen game. I thought it was a really poor performance, maybe after the exertions against Bayer. But we won the game because Aberdeen were worse. That's one of the poorest Aberdeen teams I've seen for the last 20 years. I heard you guys last week talking about Scott Brown and Lewis Ferguson. It's going to be a hard battle. It wasn't. They were powder puff, and that's how we won the game, because they were really so poor. It was an awful advert for Scottish football. I thought it's a terrible, terrible game. When they scored, I kind of felt for the first time this season we may not win the league, because I couldn't see where we could score, and it was just relief that we won the game. Pure relief. I think we're just hanging on by our fingernails to this league challenge. And every game I think it's going to be like this. And you could tell by Ange after the game, when he came on the park, it wasn't like that kind of waving to the fans. He was like, pumping the chest, and the stress he looked under, and I could have wondered whether maybe next time we get the Japanese or the Australian guys on, is that how he reacted in his first season? Because they all talk about, his first season's a bit, easy-ozy. It wasn't easy-ozy last Sunday. You could see he was feeling the pressure last Sunday. And whether he's now kind of thinking that this isn't what I signed up for. Because again, as I've maybe said in previous weeks, he's running that club on his own. On his own. And the rest are all hiding. The new chief executive, where is he? The board? They're all hiding behind him. And so it's good that we're still in it for no more than 6 behind, because I think we can still win this league. But obviously we can't afford to drop any more points. But I was a bit concerned by the game last week because I've said before, I think we're maybe not as mentally strong as we should be. And I read ETIMS, they made an interesting point after the Dundee United game, and they said that not one of the starters against Dundee United was a regular starter last season, which showed the complete overhaul in the team. You know, that's enough for the other things I'll say, but I'll let Tony.
No, just before Tony, before I bring you in, I'm going to make an early lineup, unlike many Celtic managers of the past, and bring in Alan Morrison. How you doing, Alan?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Sorry I'm a bit late, but good to join you. Thank you.
No problem. It could be a game changer going forward for the rest of the podcast, so we will wait and see. But Tony,
youth off the bench.
Tony, I'll come back to you before we bring Alan in. I've got a few stats-related things that I'm sure he'll be interested to discuss a bit further, but I wanted to get your thoughts on what Jim said there and picked up on about the lack of challenge from Scott Brown and Lewis Ferguson in the Aberdeen midfield at the weekend. You know, there was a lot of discussion before and previously about what Scott Brown could still offer us. I think personally, having seen that match at the weekend against Aberdeen, I don't feel like we're missing anything from him. I feel like we have moved on from that period and we can kind of put that a little bit to rest. Not that I'm putting words into your mouth. Please feel free to speak your own mind.
I just think, thankfully for Celtic, both of them were ranked rotten, weren't they? To be fair, I mean, if you want to get down to brass tacks, they were both ranked rotten. And as Jim said, it was a dreadful, dreadful match. Point gap to Rangers and still in it. But I agreed with a lot of what Jim said there about kind of, you saw Andy's reaction after it and stuff. That's the first time you maybe did think he was feeling the pressure of it all and not what he signed up for, as Jim said there. Don't know about that, but hey, he's in this movie now, so it has to be the right movie for him, doesn't it? It has to be the right movie for the team. But it was a poor game. But I think you ask any Celtic supporter last week, it was just relief when they got the winner, and also kind of a way of saying to the players that they can actually do that now. You know, they can win away from home, they can win ugly, and you know, I think it was a kind of watershed moment, hopefully, in the season for Celtic. You know, time will tell on that, but it was a big, massive albatross round their neck that they removed. You know, because quite serious questions were being asked. You know, and to drop points at home against Dundee United was bad enough, but had they gone to Pittodrie and dropped more points, then people were saying it was all over. You know, even at this early juncture. And is that hyperbolic? I'm not too sure. Because you just sort of look at the team and you think, all right, they can't afford to fall any more points behind. Bottom line, they need to go on a winning run. Hopefully that's the catalyst for it. And Alan will be able to tell us some numbers behind those theories, no doubt. But, you know, I was just happy to get the job done. I think that's the kind of silver lining and the kind of, it was probably the happiest win of the season, most nerve-wracking, but the happiest win of the season, and it gave the Celtic supporters the most joy this season because they proved that they can go to the end and get a late winner. So onwards and upwards, as Jim would say.
Yeah, we move on. Alan, to bring you in and set the tone a little bit for some of the questions I've got, I thought I would bring this up from Mr. Briggs. XG, not for me. All that matters is the final score. I'm not sure I agree entirely. You know,
the easy ones first, Alan. Deal with the easy ones first, right?
Yeah.
And it was part of the reason I was excited to have you on, Alan, today was, you know, obviously I speak to Jim and Tony every week about Ange Postecoglou and the process, and the phrase "trust the process" comes into play. I saw an interesting graph that John from 67 Hail retweeted, which suggested that the XG for chances created against us was lower than for any other team in the division, and the XG for chances that we created was higher than any other team in the division. So basically, my layman's understanding of that is we create really good chances and the teams that are playing against us don't create good chances. Now, obviously, the caveat to that comes with the results at the end of the day that haven't been as great as they could be. But are you seeing enough based on the numbers that you look at, the stats that you look at, to suggest that Ange is having a positive impact on the way that we're playing?
Yeah, sure. So just to address the initial point about, XG and it's only the score that matters, that's actually incorrect, and I'm probably going to get pelters for that, but it is actually incorrect. So if you look at, and I'll give you the example of Brentford and Benham that runs Brentford. So Benham basically made his money setting up a high-end analytics company that provided market information to serious gamblers. And what he found using expected goals models was that if you modeled the league table, and this is again one of the great football cliches, is the league table doesn't lie. Actually, it does, because if you model the league table using expected goals, it's more predictive of future performance than if you model it using actual goals scored. Teams get lucky, goalkeepers make great saves. Football's a low-scoring game. One goal can have a massive impact on somebody either being in a relegation zone and or not, and confidence and all those sort of things then start to kick in. But what they found was their clients were making a lot of money by betting on the outcome of games based on the expected goals data rather than the actual goals data. So that's why it's important. And all of the data that I collect and what we collect and the various people use from places like Y-Scout and StatsBomb and all these sort of things is really about analysing performance. And the reason you analyse performance is because you want to see, how predictive is that? Is it going to improve, etc. Because by analysing the performance, that gives you a feel for how we're going to perform in the future. Whereas looking at a result only tells you about the outcome of that game. It doesn't tell you anything about how you might perform in future. So that's why this is important, I feel, and hopefully others do as well. In terms of your question about, where are Celtic under Postecoglou and how are they doing? Absolutely. Now, listen, we've only played 8 league games, right? So by any statistical analysis, that's a very small sample. And Celtic have had a couple of blowouts in those games. They've absolutely destroyed a couple of teams 6-0. So that is going to skew the data, right? In those games, it wasn't like Celtic's XG was like 1 or something and they scored 6. Their XG was like 5 or 6 and they scored 6. So they actually got the rewards that their play kind of deserved a little bit in that sense. So listen, lots of warning signs around sample size, but to cut to the chase, if you look across all sorts of metrics that I collect across the SPFL, Celtic their league position really doesn't reflect the data of the underlying performances. Our average expected goals per game is 3.2, and we've only scored 2.4 goals per game. So you'd hope that over what you'd expect over a long period is that the actual goals would revert closer to the expected goals. That's what you'd normally expect to happen. Similarly, expected goals against, Celtic are 0.64 and they're actually conceding 0.75. So we're underperforming in terms of scoring less goals than the expected goals would suggest, and we're conceding slightly more goals than the expected models suggest. So some of that could be down to luck, right? Some of that could be down to a great save from the goalkeeper or what have you. Like I say, it's a low-scoring sport. But the underlying point there is that both those numbers are far better than any other team in the league. So Celtic's 3.24 expected goals per game. The next highest is 1.68. So almost double expected goals from the nearest challenger, and our expected goals against of 0.64. The next lowest is 0.91. So again, we're significantly a third, lower, if you like, than that. And again, if I could take you through, I don't want to sort of turn this into a recital of a spreadsheet, which is exactly what I'm looking at. But if I could take you through all sorts of stats, and I will do an article on this in the next week or so. Shots in the box, number of shots in total, number of shots against, possessions in the box, number of saves that the opposition goalkeeper is forced into, cross completion, on and on and on. Celtic are actually leading on all of those metrics so far. So the summary of all of that and sorry to maybe bore people with a lot of data there, the summary of all that is that the underlying performance data looks pretty good. And I think that's astonishing, because we can all see there are absolutely glaring faults in this Celtic lineup and in the squad and the depth of the squad and the ability to change the direction of the game. I mean, one of the reasons that Celtic won against Aberdeen was probably for the first time in the season we were able to bring somebody of the calibre of Rogic off the bench, and he provided the through ball from Montgomery to square for Jota. That ability to bring on a game-changing player has not been available to Postecoglou in virtually any game this season. That's huge. And if we can get to a position where we've got 3 or 4 players on the bench that can come on and make that impact, then you start to see the benefit of why Celtic's wage bill is 20 times that of an Aberdeen or a Hearts or what have you, because that's the benefit you should get from being able to do that. And we haven't seen that. So there's huge problems that Postecoglou has to face. The midfield is an absolute shambles. The fullback positions are so below the quality that Celtic need, and those are key positions. And then the attacking positions, there's been a lack of cover and no ability to change the game. One example would be, Jota. Jota has played 90 minutes in 7 consecutive matches now. The last time he did that was for Benfica B team a few years ago, and that wasn't 2 games a week. That was 1 game a week. So the kid is playing an intensity of football he's never experienced in his life before under pressure. So that's just one little problem that Postecoglou is trying to wrestle with. But the underlying data, I would say, is very promising.
It does sound very promising, not least for Tim Billy, who says this guy must win a fortune in the coupons.
I don't bet. I don't gamble.
Maybe for some more info, Alan, in the future, and maybe we can split the winnings. But Tony, I know I find the stats stuff really, really interesting, and I love to listen to it. I listen to the Huddle Breakdown and other podcasts like it just because I'm a bit of a geek that way. I know that you are seeing more stats come into the game, and you use them sort of sparingly, if you like. Again, not trying to put words in your mouth, but does what Alan's suggesting there in terms of what the stats show and the positivity of the way the play is improving, do you see that reflected on the pitch, just giving it, the eye test that most football fans would?
I think the kind of stats are betraying where Celtic should be, and that's what Alan's kind of saying there, right? And that's fair enough. But I mean, if the scientific evidence is there and all you have to do is prove it, and that Celtic are going in the right direction, then you have to take that on board. As I say, it's a vital part of football now, and mostly every manager is now relying on stats and stuff to prove it. So that's fine, and I get that it's a very important part. I just think that. Alan said what Celtic expected goals average, Alan, 3.2 or something, did you say?
Yeah, in the SPFL, yeah.
Yeah, but they've scored what, 2.6?
2.6, 2 point something.
2.38,
sorry, 2.38.
Yeah. So there's a clear disparity there. Yeah, there's a clear disparity there, but you're saying the science is that they're creating those chances to score those goals.
Yeah,
so
I mean, what would be really bad is if that number was low, or if we were massively overperforming, and what you'd expect to see then is a regression to the mean, as they say.
The stats are saying they should be higher up the table. That's what I mean. So it's backing it
definitely,
up.
Absolutely.
Are underperforming. So, and I think that's what kind of fans are finding it hard. Some fans are finding it hard to get their head around that.
Yes.
That's all.
So sorry, Tony, if I can come in. So the Cynic analysis produce a expected points league table, which is based on expected goals, and of course everyone like you're just finding you're inventing data to put Celtic at the top of the league kind of thing. You get all this sort of stuff, but actually the same methodology was used the last 2 years that showed that the Rangers were not as far behind, or that showed that how far they were ahead at the beginning of last season. The same methodology, and it showed that they weren't as far behind Celtic the season before as the actual league table suggested, which was proven the following season. So this is a methodology which, as I say, is exactly the same process that Matthew Benham went through in terms of the English Premier League, especially, and gambling and predicting. And it does show that actually, if games were played on the computer, Monte Carlo simulation, blah blah blah, Celtic should be much further up the table. Absolutely.
But the proof in that is what Brentford are doing right now, isn't it? So you look at it and say, right, then it has its merits. Clearly, that's what I'm driving at. So.
Yeah. It's about performance. It's about looking at performance. I keep coming back to, and I think Postecoglou makes this point himself. It's what he's concerned about is how the team perform, because if you are performing at a high level, the results will come. You might hit the bar, you might lose to an unlucky last-minute penalty, but if you keep performing to that in a certain way, to a certain level, the results will come.
Yeah, that seems to be certainly the way I'm reading it, that the results will come. Jim, your thoughts on it? I mean, it's certainly the way that football's going in terms of a stats-driven game, and I think our manager is maybe a bit surprised that we as a club aren't going that way. He was crying out for a sports scientist who he now thankfully who I know is more on the physical medical side of things, but having spoken to Jared last week, he mentioned that A-League teams have numerous sports scientists, numerous stats analysts and stuff on their books at the club. Do you think that's the way Celtic need to modernise going forward to have the success of a Brentford or a similarly run club? Or do you think it's, horses for courses, clubs run differently? No,
of course we need that. I think what Alan is saying is keep the faith, basically, that we're not as bad as people think we are. I think all the objective data that Alan got kind of backs up the subjective view of the fans, because I think apart from the second half at Ibrox, we've dominated most games, and games have been unlucky hitting the bar. Talked about Dun United game, hit the bar 3 times, and Yeti misses them 2 yards out. So, one of them changed, we win the game. So I don't think we've been as bad as people make out. It's the fact we're dropping points. And that's what's leading to the hysteria. And we'll get to a point that maybe we've dropped too many points and we're too far behind. But I love all the stats stuff. And I think the more stats, the better, because it gives us a far better understanding of what's happening. But I think in most cases, it tends to back up the subjective view of the fan who's watching the game. One thing I'm interested to ask Alan would be, in terms of Abada, how does his stats fare? Because this is going to be an unpopular opinion.
You're anti-Abada, Jim.
I know where he's going.
Abada for me is a man down. I mean, he's popped up with a few goals and he's scored a few goals and he shows a real striker's instinct. But he's hardly beat a man. He never tracks back. Ralston's doing the job with 2 players. And I just think we're a man down for Abada. But I read a stat a few weeks ago that Abada was involved in X number of goals. But I think what the stats maybe don't show you is the impact on the team. I think if we had somebody else instead of Abada playing there, would he create more chances? Would he score more goals? Because what I would like to see was a kind of tweaking the team. I'd like to see them go 4-1-3-2. So I think we need to find a way of playing 2 up front. And Kyogo, for me, fantastic through the centre, but play him wide. He's a man down. Ibrox, he did nothing. Last Sunday, put him wide, he does nothing, and impacts the whole team for me. So I would like to see Kyogo certainly up the centre, get Yakimakis in the team, which means that we don't have to go just around the team or through the team and go over the team. Maybe Kyogo could pick up scraps. I'd like to see Jota on the right. I think his best game is against Betis on the right, and he would at least track back. I'd like to see Montgomery on the left, because I think he's better going forward, and he can also track back. Kalmak in the 1, Kyogo, Giamakis up front, and either Turnbull and Rogic in the centre. And we can keep playing the heart attack football at the back if he wants to do that. But I just think, and I'm sure the boy will be an excellent player for us. I've not just had, at this moment in time, I think Abada's not for me.
Well,
Alan.
Strangelove the doctor says Abada's stats are a bit weird. I'm praying for you to save me here, because I've got a soft spot for Abada. I spoke to him at the fan press conference when he signed, so regardless of whether the stats or the performances back it up, I'm backing him all the way. Come on, give us your best. Back me up here.
Oh, the cold hard stats are no respecter of soft spots, Laura. I'm sorry. But no, listen. I think he's a fascinating player, and I kind of agree with the sentiment in the comment that came through. And I do need to look at this more deeply. I'm just having a wee quick flick through at the moment. It would probably astonish you, Jim, to know that Abada's got the highest expected assists rate of the squad at the moment, and it's really high. It's unsustainably high, I would say. So
I take it all back. Sorry, I'm a wee boy.
Jim, that's Alan flicking an imaginary V sign at you there, by the way.
No, not at all. Not at all. Listen, it's still
apart from that, Alan.
It's still early days. I would say is because I think when I watching him without a sort of stats head on, watching him from a performance analysis perspective, I think he's got potentially elite level movement. His movement off the ball is potentially elite level in the sense of his ability to arrive in the box at precisely the right moment.
He said elite.
Yes, yeah, and potentially I'm said as well. That was the key word, potentially.
I think also said that he actually showed a real striker's instinct in the box.
Yeah, but I made the point on the huddle breakdown yesterday that I think that Abada's potentially a right winger playing a striker playing as a right winger, and Yotta's potentially a number 10 playing as a left winger. And it was interesting just to come back to the Aberdeen game. What happened was, again, because we didn't have the players that could come off the bench and change the game, is that our two most creative players, Abada and Jota, were up against two very young athletic fullbacks who are actually very strong at stopping the dribble. And that's part of the reason why Celtic's attack ground to a halt during that game. I don't think McKenzie and Ramsey are particularly technically gifted, but they're big, strong lads and quick, and they did very well closing that down. But back to Abada, his expected goals total is lower than I would have expected. It's about just under 0.4 per game. But that's because I think he tends to, he's got the Christie disease. He tends to take a lot of optimistic shots from not very good distances and angles. I did a wee plotting graph yesterday, actually, and I think one of the reasons probably why Abada splits opinion is he's one of these players that I would classify as a high risk taker. And what I mean by that is he attempts passes that are very difficult. He attempts through balls that are very difficult. He attempts crosses that are very difficult. He tries to do difficult stuff. Now, I think that's going to be a feature of Postecoglou's team. He wants game changers in the final third, players that are going to try difficult and game-changing things. What that means is you'll get a lot of, oh God, he's always giving the ball away, or oh my God, that was a bad decision. And I mean, Yotta's final third decision-making isn't great. And that in his career, in the data, that is seen as being his biggest weakness. Abada, actually, I plotted two things. One is expected assists. So how creative is the player being? Because if I pass the ball to you, Tony, and you balloon it over the bar, that's not my fault. I still get the credit for giving you the opportunity, right?
Well,
I'm sure it's not. I'm sure it bobbled. I'm sure you got a rough bobble. The other thing I plotted was how many times is the player losing possession in the final third. So they get the ball in the final third, and then we don't get a corner, we don't get a shot, we don't create a chance. They just lose possession. And Abada is in the top right quadrant of that particular plotting. So he loses the ball a lot, but he also has got the highest creativity stats. So he takes a lot of risks. And I think in that sense, he's a very good fit for a Postecoglou signing. And Yotta's not that far behind him, to be fair. And bless him, Ryan Christie would be up there in the same sort of ballpark.
Oh well, he'll have to work on his expected goals and assists with.
No, it's a good news story, I think. Sorry, I'm just trying to present the numbers and not give a subjective. But no, my takeaway.
Okay, see you next week. Bye.
Yeah. No, my takeaway from that would be that.
It's a good night from me. It's a good night from Jim.
Yeah, I'm happy with
Abada.
Yeah, I'm very happy with Abada. I can see the weaknesses. He doesn't get. I mean, Jota, for example, has got a wonderful ability to get on the ball. He finds space and he gets on the ball, and he gets on the ball a lot for a wide player. Whereas Abada's one of these that doesn't see the ball for 20 minutes. But once he does get it, he tries to make something happen, and that really comes through in the data.
I think from a subjective point of view, Alan, watching the games, when I see Abada, he tends to go back more than go forward. When Jota gets the ball, his head's up and he's taking players on. And as you said, there's times where Abada's never near the ball for 20, 30 minutes. And I just think, from a subjective point of view, maybe a more effective, a different type of player over there. And Jota's been great, I think. Anyway, I shall bow to the stats in this one, but I still think we should change things. I think the system...
Brian Walsh on YouTube is paraphrasing our very own wordsmith Tony Haggerty, saying this is fascinating stuff. It's the application of this kind of thing that will drag analogue Celtic into the digital age. And speaking of dragging yourself into the digital age, you can subscribe to A Celtic State of Mind. How smooth was that, guys? I'm getting this.
Oh,
you can subscribe to A State of Mind on YouTube. We've got a Facebook page, Twitter. We're going live on Twitch, LinkedIn, and various other platforms. So get involved in the comments. As you can see, we love to hear from you. And don't forget about the giveaways that we have for new subscribers and old. This month's one is a Bobby Lennox signed print. So get involved and you can be in with a chance of winning those giveaways. We've given away some platinum disc displays and things from bands who unfortunately I don't listen to. I'm waiting for the Westlife one, but we'll see what happens.
We'll wait a long time, Laura.
I know, I'm fear it will be, but we'll see what happens. Tony, I'll come to you. As the strapline says, does the international break give Ange time to regroup? International break for a lot of teams is that chance for players who've maybe struggled to get fitness, to get a bit more dedicated time from the staff that remain behind. We've certainly had a long injury list, but it also gives Ange a bit of time to ingrain a little bit more of that footballing philosophy. Do you think this has come at a welcome time for him, that off the back of a strong result, he can regroup and hopefully pushes forward going into the next part of the season?
I think he joked himself that it came at a bad time because the last one wasn't kind to him, didn't he? And he made about the international players going away, and if they got injured, don't bother coming back. I think it's good and a bad thing, isn't it? Because I think Andy's going back to it, I think he's a digital manager working with an analogue board, basically, I said before, and some analogue players potentially. But the good thing about him is he's a training ground manager, right? And in this 2 weeks, he will get a chance to work with some of the players, get some of the injured ones back to some kind of fitness. But he would also, on the flip side, probably have wanted to build some more momentum, and he would maybe have preferred a game. So international breaks are kind of, you take what you want from them. The last one was a disaster. They lost two most influential players in Kyogo and McGregor. They'll be praying that nothing like that happens again, but that's what happens in football. You can't legislate for that. You can't legislate for players being injured in international duty. But the ones that he's got back home, and I'm thinking more the likes of Julian and Forrest, guys like that, Juranovic, it's a chance to nurse them back to, a full fitness if he can, and really get to work with them. And I think that's the problem with a lot of managers. These international breaks come and they don't get enough time to work with the players, because it's split up and various players go away. So, but he'll be trying, certainly, and I'd be very interested to see how far away the likes of Julian, Forrest and Juranovic are on the resumption after the international break. I'd like to think that they would be close. Julian, just his date keeps getting put back, and that worries me slightly. But as I've spoken before, I don't want any unnecessary risk to be taken with Julian, considering the extent of his injury and to the knee. And the knee's just one of those things you cannot muck about with. It. You cannot put somebody in who's not 100% fit with a knee injury. I'm sorry, you just can't. So I'm allowing for that. But I think it was a good and a bad thing. Good in the sense that you'll get time to work with players and instill more of your philosophy, your style. Get guys more comfortable with it, and bad in the sense that he probably would have wanted the games to come thick and fast again to build some momentum.
I think hopefully I'm on the positive side of things and think, like you say, fingers crossed, if we don't get any injuries, the same as we did the last time, we can come out of it better. Jim, Tony raises an interesting point, and it's one that I wanted to get your thoughts on. We discussed it briefly last week. It's now probably coming up to and will be almost a year if Julian gets back into the squad in the next couple of weeks. We talked last week about, perhaps absence making the heart grow fonder and thinking that he's maybe thought of as a better footballer than he maybe is. What are your thoughts on Julian, and do you think, he's going to strengthen the squad if he does come back in the near future?
Certainly gives us more physicality. What was he, 6'4", 6'5", big guy in both ends of the pitch. So, it'd be good to have him back, fully fit. And I think he'll add to the team. Interested as Hugh drops out. Because I think I've said before, I think Starfelt's been kind of much maligned. I think he's played reasonably well in the big games, unless Alan's going to tell me otherwise. He's maybe made the odd mistakes in the kind of not so big games, like he was good last week. Callum Vickers, yeah, he's been okay as well. So, and obviously Ange, I can't imagine he's going to switch to a back three. So, it'll be interesting who he comes in for if he does come in. Because as you just said, Tony, that's a bad injury. And do you lose a yard of pace? Are you a bit hesitant getting in for 50-50s and whatever? And again, without trying to be too down on a player, I think one of the issues I had with Julian in his Celtic career was he was a bit of a drama queen at times, and maybe that's unfair. Whereas the two we've got just now, I don't think a drama queen. So, Big Ange will see them on the training pitch. He'll know who he's best to out of three are. I'd like to think he'll be good enough to come back in. I'd like to think he made a difference because he scored some big goals for us the season before last, and he was a big miss last year. And he injured at a time where we had a kind of wee run of whatever it was, 5 or 6 wins, and we were looking half decent. And if he'd have played at Ibrox, if bucks and nibbies, who knows? But yeah, we need as many players back as possible. And I think just in terms of the strap line, I think is a good thing. I think we've had a horrendous injury list. That gives another couple of weeks to hopefully get 1 or 2 back. As Tony says, gives Ange a chance to work on the training pitch. Gives us a chance to relax for a couple of weeks because it's quite an intense, whatever it's been so far, 8-9 weeks of the season. I mean, I played a ridiculous number of games in that 8-9 weeks. We got the win last week, which makes us all happy. So we're into the break, a lot happier. If we hadn't scored that goal last week, it'd be doom and gloom just now. So that's the positive we'll take from that. 2 weeks to relax and refocus and hope to go to Fir Park and get another victory. But in terms of Julian, yeah, it'd be good to get him back soon as, and same as James Forrest as well.
Alan, is there a stat for expected headers? Julian?
Well, I do track aerial challenges, and the Starfelt is a really fascinating one because he divides people. He looks awkward. I mean, for me, I have a problem. I can't get over just watching him because he just looks awkward. His physical movement is weird. It's really strange. He seems to take far too many body movements to do what I think is a really simple thing. I don't know how to explain it properly. Hopefully that makes sense. But actually, I think I agree with Jim. He's been much maligned unfairly. He did make a couple of mistakes in the early days. Starfelt's data is massively depressed by the fact he's not aerially dominant. He's very good on the ground, but he's not a big guy, and he's not particularly strong in the air. That's really the difference that Julian brings. Julian is hugely. I mean, when we signed Julian was probably the most dominant aerial defender in the French top league, in both boxes. Right, that's how effective he is. And remember, Julian and I are, by the data, are the best centre half pairing we've had since Van Dijk and Denayer. Yeah. Absolutely no doubt about that. So he's a top defender. Whether he fits in Postecoglou's system, because he's not the quickest, and a year out with a knee injury isn't going to make him faster, I suggest. Julian playing a high line, is going to be interesting. But we are weak in the air at the moment because Carter Vickers isn't a big guy either. Both of them around, Welsh, Carter Vickers, Starfelt, they're all just about 6 foot, no more. And none of them are aerially dominant. So, and we know in the Scottish game, whether we like it or not, that is a factor because teams play a tremendous number of long balls in Scotland. So I don't know. I think I completely agree with you, Tony. Whatever happens, we got to ease him back very gently, and not take a risk. Yeah. He's a big guy, right? And again, big guys don't heal as quickly. He carries in his frame. He carries more weight than most players. So all of those are factors that suggest he needs to be nursed back very, very gradually.
Alan, while we're on the subject of defence, Paradise63 on YouTube has asked, does Alan have a view on our defence at the moment as Ralston and Monty look like average fullbacks? It's a discussion that we've had a lot on the podcast about who the first choice fullbacks would be. Some people have suggested Scales can play at left back. Obviously, Juranovic has played at both left and right back, but prefers right back predominantly. And Taylor, who's obviously out injured at the moment, is another option that we have. What are you making of the fullback position in terms of the way you look at the game? Because I know you mentioned earlier you thought it was one of the signs of weakness in the team. Yeah,
massively, and it's an important role within Postecoglou's system, as all roles are, of course. But the way that Postecoglou is trying to get the team to play isn't easy. It's not an easy system to learn and to play properly. And the reason that I say that is because you're asking players to make a lot of decisions, and the more decisions you ask people to make, the more complex the system is, and therefore the harder it is to implement. Which is why I think net the international break is a good thing, if it gets him more time on the training pitch to get his philosophy and his ideas and the way he wants the team to play. And asking somebody like Tony Ralston to play as an inverted fullback and essentially build the play from a deep sort of six position and be providing passes out wide to a winger or through balls to the midfield, advanced midfield players, is a little bit of a stretch, as we've seen. I'm absolutely loath to criticise Ralston because, my God, the lad puts in a shift, and just for sheer effort, you cannot fault the guy at all. But he's just so far from the quality that Celtic need, unfortunately, in terms of the amount of time he just gives the ball away. He can't complete simple passes. Watching him try to take on the Leverkusen left back and get to the byline was just painful. I mean, you can't but admire his ambition and to think that he could do that. But it's just not the right player for that system. He's just not a player of sufficient quality, unfortunately. With Montgomery, I'm kind of going to sit on the fence a little bit, because when I watch the game as a fan, as I do, like we all do, not with my sort of analytical head on when I watch it the second time, I get frustrated with him because I think he gives the ball away a lot. But I come back to this point about risk takers. So I'm not quite sure with Montgomery quite what we've got. I'll tell you this: when I've captured the data from the game, I always end up going, "Oh, he didn't play as badly as I thought he did with Montgomery." So take from that what you will. I'm going to give the guy a pass for now because I'm not sure what we've got in Montgomery in terms of a player. But in any event, he's a young kid that's been thrown into, again, a complex system with very little support. And I'm not sure, obviously he's not going to be, I wouldn't think he's going to be the long-term answer. I think Juranovic is going to be a class act. He's a proper player. And if we can get him fit and into that right-back spot, I think we're in good shape in that position. But we've got an issue at left-back because, I hate to say it, but potentially Bolingoli is the best option that we've got. But probably for political reasons, he doesn't seem to feature.
Yeah. Whose News on YouTube says Ralston would run through brick walls for Celtic.
Absolutely.
I think that's the point you were making. It was he almost plays like most of us would in a Celtic shirt. We would try our hardest, even though we might not be quite good enough to actually do what we think we can. Jim, I don't know if you saw on Twitter, but I think it was a Leverkusen game. Our very own Russell Boyce shared that picture of the two inverted fullbacks standing in the centre circle, way out of position. We had a bit of a more detailed discussion with Jared and Tony on it last week. Jim, what's your opinion on this whole inverted fullback thing? Is it something that we can actually play against better opposition? Is it something the players need to get used to? Or is it an idea that's kind of got you concerned?
Got me concerned, yeah. I'll go for option 3 there. Got me concerned. I think my understanding was that with the inverted fullback, one goes and one stays. So I don't know if that was a mistake the players made, if one goes and one stays, because it just looked odd. What I found watching the Leverkusen game, there was a bit in the first half, I think it was, where Tony Ralston goes inside and one of the centre-backs plays him a pass. And he's almost in the centre circle. There's nobody in the right wing at all. Abada is miles away. He's on the touchline, miles away. And you're thinking, well, leaving it to Tony Ralston to do something creative here. As Alan said, he tries hard, but that's not his game. And you're thinking that's such a huge risk to leave Tony Ralston with that responsibility. And if he's not up to doing that, why are we asking him to do that? Well, he's getting asked to do that because that's the way Ange wants to play. So he is taking risks. That's the point Alan was making. And the more risk we take, the chance of we're going to lose goals by doing that. And we've been fortunate, I think, this season. We maybe haven't lost goals. We've lost the odd one or two, but maybe not kind of more than we could have lost. So the inverted fullbacks, if you've got the players to play that, I'm sure it'll work okay. But I think in that particular instance, the two of them shouldn't have been there. And one should have been and one should have been back. It's hard to get used to. I mean, there's not been a game this season where I've not shouted at least 25 times, get rid of the ball for the guys at the back. That kind of back to Joe Hart, he sits on it and gives it to him. Get rid of the ball. And they're never going to get rid of it because they've been told, keep the ball. When it works really well. But it's heart attack football watching it. Real heart attack football. And it's been such a fascinating season so far. New manager comes in, whole new bunch of players coming in, whole new system. And it's kind of, it will take time. That's why I think we have to cut the big chaps some slack with this. Whatever players that he tries, whatever system that he tries, I think we just have to get behind the guy. Inverted fullbacks, whatever else he's going to do, let's just see how it goes. It's worked for him in the past. And as long as we can keep on the coattails of the league leaders, then I'll be happy with that for now.
Yeah, we need to catch up with the coattails first of all, I think, before we're actually on them. But hopefully time will tell and we'll get there. Thanks everybody for commenting. We're sitting at nearly 700 live viewers this morning, and we appreciate every single one of you. Thanks very much for getting involved. As you see, we love hearing from you on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, and wherever you happen to comment. Apart from Jim, he's away, he's gone, he's done for the day. But Tony, I'll come on to you. You raised an interesting point earlier about, I can't remember if it was you or Jim, actually, you're both so interesting. Giakoumakis. I get that he's taking time to get up to speed and he's taking time to bed in and things like that. But given that we've got Furuhashi who's making very long trips back to Japan and the surrounding area for playing his international games, we are going to have to start relying on somebody else up front soon if we haven't already. Surely Giakoumakis has got to start making an impact pretty soon, or get the chance to at least.
Beware of Greeks bearing goals, is that what you're saying, Laura? Well, yeah, but we've not really seen much of him, have we? Mm-hmm. Because he got injured in the warm-up to one of the games, which puzzled everybody. And then he came on against Leverkusen, didn't he?
Yeah.
When it was all a bit too little, too late. And he came on in the last game there, didn't he? He came on against Dundee United Aberdeen.
Yeah, I think so. Just literally, like you say, a couple of 10-minute appearances and whatever, but yeah.
So nobody's really had the chance to see what he can bring. His DVD highlights package from Venlo suggests he's got a bit about him and a bit in his armoury. And Alan will probably know the expected goals figures for Giakoumakis and he'll be able to fill us in a bit more information. But you know what? I just think, see, if you're a striker at Celtic and you can't score goals, then there's something wrong, isn't there? That's why I think everybody's kind of got a wee downer on Ajeti, because he doesn't do it often enough, and the stats might bear that out, or they might not. But you want your strikers to be a bit more. Kyogo as a striker, he makes intelligent runs, doesn't always get the ball, but he's still in the right place at the right time. And then I made the point on Monday about the actual type of goal he scored last week. How many strikers would have had the presence of mind and the sharpness of the brain to put that in with their chest?
That's very clever, yeah.
There's not that many, right? You can't teach that. Ajeti couldn't have done that. I'm not sure if Giakoumakis would be capable of doing it either. So, different strikers bring different things to the table, but, we've not seen anything of Giakoumakis to make any kind of judgment. But I would like to see him up there and given a try to start maybe the next game or whatever. But can you really drop Kyogo at this moment in time? The answer is no. So he's going to have to be patient and be bedded in and given kind of cameos here and there. But it's up to Giakoumakis to give the manager a decision to make moving forward. But I think everybody is curious. When every new signing comes in, you want to see what they bring to the table. And I think Giakoumakis has been unlucky because he got injured in the warm-up when he was maybe going to start and get the chance to make that impact. But in the fullness of time, he'll get his chance. But, I say I can only go on what I've watched on the Venlo highlights, and he looks as if he can score goals, which for any striker, that's all that matters, really.
Yeah, it is the most important stat, as you say. But having said that, I'll come to Alan and ask, do you have much information on Giakoumakis? I know I'm springing on you on this a little bit. The main stat that we have is, that he was one of the top scorers in the Eredivisie, despite the fact that VVV Venlo were quite low down in the table. So that in itself is a promising thing. You would expect his conversion rate for chances to be relatively high, considering he probably won't be getting many. But what do you know about Giakoumakis and what he might be able to offer us once he does get a chance in the team?
Yeah, so listen, I mean, disclosure. So the data that I use, I collect myself, but there are a lot of sources of data, and most of them useful ones are subscription services. So things like StatsBomb and to get full access to Y-Scout data and so forth, or some of the sites that have got relationships with vendors and so forth. So I relied on others like I mentioned the Cynics analysis, Boys Analytics. There's a number of people that did excellent assessments of Giakoumakis when he signed a few months ago. So that's really, I'll be honest with you, that's my. I listen to the experts as well on that one in terms of assessing him. I mean, he's a guy who didn't have a particularly prolific scoring record until last season. To score that many goals for a team that's relegated is quite extraordinary. And obviously, he was playing a role in which the objective was to get him the ball in those goal scoring positions. What I mean by that is he's not a player that I think is going to wander around the pitch like a la Edouard. And actually that fits in with how the strikers are playing under Postecoglou. I mean, Ayeti's involvement in games is I mean, if you thought Lee Griffiths didn't have... I always used to joke about Lee Griffiths that he'd come off the pitch, he'd have had more shots than completed passes, which is just... Yeah, and it wasn't actually far much of an exaggeration sometimes. And I think that is the case with Ayeti and when Kyogo plays in that position. Postecoglou wants his strikers to play within the width of the 18-yard box and not to get involved in the build-up too much. He wants to get flat low crosses or cutbacks, preferably, into an area between the 6-yard box and the penalty spot. That's the area that you're going to get the best chances in. It all makes perfect sense, and you need somebody in there. So, Ayeti's had a chance, and he's not really taken it, in all honesty. His expected goals of 0.57 is pretty disappointing. Kyogo's over 1, which is kind of where Edouard was at his peak. So that's the sort of standard that Giakoumakis needs to aspire to. He's a very different kind of player. He's a big physical guy. He's 6'2", I think. The very brief I saw of him against Leverkusen, he looked like he had a decent touch, but I think we're going to get a different kind of striker. He looks like somebody. I believe he's somebody who can left foot, right foot header. He's got a lot of different goals that he scores. So pretty excited to see him. But again, he's not going to be someone that's linking the play, but getting involved in build up. It's going to be a case of Jota, Abada getting Rogic, Turnbull threading balls through, getting balls into him, and then let's see what he can do.
Yeah, I'm always excited. I think the amateur football fan in me likes to see a new striker score goals. I remember being a kid and waiting all those months for George Cadet to sign, with all the off the pitch things that happened that I read about in more detail in years to come. But for legal purposes, we won't go into that in any more detail. Jim, he's a strange one, Giakoumakis, because my understanding was that he'd had a full pre-season. Obviously, the injury and the warm-up aside, I'm struggling to understand why he hasn't been match fit before now to get his chance. Do you think it is a match fitness thing, or is there perhaps another reason why he might not be getting into the team, or is it, as Tony says, just down to Furuhashi kind of making the shirt his own?
So what you're alluding to there, another reason, Laura?
Well, just I don't know. Perhaps a struggling to settle, that kind of thing. A non-footballing reason, I suppose, that affects the football. As opposed
to a non-Ange signing, is that? I thought that's what you'd be getting at.
Well, I think we can. I think there's other ones that would come above him in the list. But
I just think we've got the top scorer in Holland last season. We need to see him at some point soon. And as I said earlier, I'd like to see 2 up front. I'd like to see him play alongside Kyogo to see how that pans out. Maybe that's not an Ange way of doing things, playing 2 guys up front. I don't know, Alan, is that the case? He doesn't normally play 2 up front ever?
Not I've seen, really. I mean, it's generally been either a 3-4-1 three. It has played three at the back on occasions, not often, but generally it's a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3 usually.
I think if this guy turns out to be as good as we think, but as good as we hope he is, and we've got Kyogo as well, and we don't play both of them. To me, that's a wee bit rigid. I don't know. I mean, certainly at games at Celtic Park, we're going to have 70% possession. We're going to make lots of chances. To have two guys up front and to see how Kyogo fares playing alongside somebody, because I think that would be an interesting thing to see. But if you've signed this guy, he scored all these goals last season, we have to play him. But I'm a bit concerned that it's an either or. If we're going to play him, then we don't play Kyogo. Because as I said earlier, I think Kyogo playing wide is again man down. He just doesn't do it for me out there. So I'd like to see them both up front. I'd like to see him as soon as possible to see what he's like. Because it's a bit like last season where we didn't play Turnbull and we didn't play Sorrow until December. And we thought, look, those are two really good players. I mean, if this guy doesn't get a game for another couple of months and we've dropped more points and he comes in and starts banging the goals, we'll then say, why didn't you play him at the start of the season? Because I said now, because obviously he can score goals. So yeah, it'd be good to see him as soon as possible. But that can either or is a bit of a concern. Because Kyogo he's our best player. So are we saying we have to leave our best player out to play this guy? That's a big risk to take. So as I said earlier, I'd like to see two up front. That's how I'd get him into the team. And Abada out, obviously. I had to jump away. That was Abada looking for a square go there. I had to tell him to. Didn't he mean it? Honest.
You're willing to just get rid of an expected assists ratio like that, Jim?
Not get rid of, just temporarily put him on the bench. That's all I'm saying. I love him really, but just
he's a kid. Remember, he's 9. I think he's just turned 20, so got to factor that in as well.
That is true. I mean, that's an interesting one, actually, Tony, that I was just reminded of when Alan said that. Abada has only just turned 20. There's been suggestions by others on the show and various other podcasts that I listen to that perhaps he's being held to a slightly higher standard than some of our homegrown players who are even a few years senior to him. Do you think that's a fair criticism of the Celtic support, or do you think, is it more the other way? My personal opinion, to not set you up too much, is that we should have higher expectations of all players. I think 20 is young, but ultimately, there's a lot of players that are showing their class by the age of 20, surely.
Yeah, of course. But I actually think Abada's been a wee victim of his own early success. He hit the ground running when he came to Celtic. And I think at 19, when he came in, people maybe thought of him as a project player. But he came in and he, as I say, hit the ground running, scored a couple of important goals, and people were like, this guy's a real deal. Now, Alan was saying the stats back up, that kind of thing, but Jim saying in a few games he has fallen away, but he set a very high bar. So when you fall below that, you get criticised, don't you? And as Alan alluded to earlier as well, he's a young man coming from a different country, coming to a football lifestyle that's pretty intense. There's levels, and he's also learning a new system of football, like many of them are, and include all the younger Celtic players that are in the team. So you do have to factor all of these things in. I quite like Abada. I think his performances have dipped, recently, and it's fine. And when James Forrest comes back, there'll be a right battle to claim that starting jersey. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because it might give Abada another G up, So, but there are things that I like about Abada, and one of them is he seems to be, I think Alan or Jim said it, that he seems to be a striker playing in a wide role.
Yeah.
A nose for goal for a start, and not many 19, 20-year-olds have that, So I take my hat off to him for that. I pretty much I can empathise with these guys, because they've came into a situation, and it's a season that's going to be intense from the get-go. They're all learning new things, the manager too, and the players. So yeah, I can understand the peaks and troughs. But as Alan said earlier, the stats in Abada are pretty high and they're pretty good. So we must be doing something right.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, I think Abada's a good player.
No, I'm not saying he's a bad player.
He did say that in his first few games. I thought he was fantastic. And like you said, Tony, you thought he's pretty good. Now, for me, this season, every player who makes the first 11 has to contribute. Has to be a 7 out of 10 at least. And I would say over the last 4 or 5 games, apart from the goal against United, he hasn't really contributed very much in those games. I just think, irrespective of whether he's 19 or 20, to me it doesn't matter. Basically, you're in the team in merit. So you could be 45 and you can say, he's a bit old. Why is he in the team? Because I picked him. So if you picked him in the team, he has to contribute. And all I'm really saying is that I think he's a good player. He's got an eye for a goal. I think his form has dipped. And we think we need everyone at this particular point in time, 7 out of 10s every single game. And I don't think he's done that the past few games, and he's still in the team. And that's why I'm saying I think it's time for a wee change in there. And I'd love him to tweak the system to give Giakoumakis a game, to get back to the point earlier. I'd love to see that.
I think I probably fall firmly square in the middle, where I love what Abada does when he's on the ball and when he does it. But I think, like Jim says, he spends large portions of games just completely missing. And that might be, to Alan's point earlier, the position that he's playing and the fact that, sometimes the ball just doesn't get out there. But, like Jim says, we're at a stage where we need 7s, 8s out of 10s from players across the field, and we need to make sure that they're given the chance to do that as well. So we'll see how it goes. He's got off to a decent enough start anyway, certainly a better start than a lot of signings we've had, and I can see a bright future for him, and I think we all can. So
Laura, just on Abada, sorry, interrupt you. So just on Abada then. So just one kind of key metric that I always use is expected scoring contribution. Sorry, that sounds a real mouthful, but expected assists plus expected goals. Very simple formula. Expected goals plus expected assists. So that's really, when it comes down to it, it's your raw output. Chances you're creating, the quality of the chances you're creating, the quality of the strikes that you're having at goal. So if you add up expected goals and expected assists for Abada, he's just under 1 per game. That means his expected model says he should be contributing at least 1 goal or assist in every game. And for a wide player, that's fantastic. Only Kyogo and Edouard would be above 1. So out of all the other players in the squad, Abada would be next ranked on that. He doesn't get involved a lot, but he gets involved in a lot of big moments. That's what I would say.
And hopefully, we have many more of those big moments to come. But for now, we will leave you, and thanks for joining us today. That's been the Friday show with Tony, Jim and Alan. Lots of interesting conversation. Unfortunately, obviously no game this weekend because of the international break, but you can always tune into A State of Mind to watch any of the content that's already up there and subscribe to be notified when we go live at any time that we do go live, even if it's short notice or, as it is today, nearly not happening at all. But thank you, Tony. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Alan. And thank you, everybody. This has been A Celtic State of Mind.